Hello again. My name is Matt. I'm a university professor in the creative Heureka labs. Today we're going to dive into another data science video specifically looking at the programming language called R. Now, I'm going to assume the watchers of this video have no experience with R. They know it's a language and maybe that's about it. So we're going to start with a very basic understanding of this programming language and build up from there. The most important thing to realize about any programming language is, just like it sounds, it's a language. So just like Spanish or Mandarin, or pick whatever language you were asked to learn in high school, R has a couple of unique rules about it. So let's look at some of those now. The R language has something that is called a value. A value is going to be something in the R programming language that can be a number, it can be a name, it can be a letter, it can be a date, it can be a lot of different types of things. These are called values. R also has objects. An object is a little bit more abstract of an idea. You can think of an object as a container that holds something. An object can be a lot of different things. It can be a value, just like I told you. It can also be multiple values. It can be a number, it can be a result, it can be a lot of different things. And so you can think of this as a temporary object. R also has functions, and these functions are going to be instructions for this programming language to operate on. So if you have a number inside of an object, you can tell R to do something to that number. Let's say you want to find an average of a bunch of numbers, or you want to calculate what's half of a single number. It doesn't really matter. The function is really just what we call the instructions that we will then use to operate on this value, this number, this object, etc. With these three primary elements of the R programming language, you'll need to understand that there's some nuances about how we tell R what we're talking about and what it is. So first, let's start with values. If a value is a number, that's just going to be the number by itself. But if a value is a word, it's going to have quotes around it. Now let's talk about objects. Because objects can store a lot of temporary things, the name of the object can also be really flexible. Sometimes we just call this X, and we assign something to be X. Now, if X is in quotes, what will happen is R will think that this is a value. But if we have X outside of quotes, just by itself, then R is going to say, aha, this is an object. I will look and see what is inside of my object. The third element of R are functions, and this is going to be some name followed by parentheses. The parentheses are going to be arguments about the function, and we'll get into those later. But these parentheses are going to tell R, aha, this is going to be a function. So you can have something that is, let's say, the name Matt, and this is going to be in quotes, and that will then be a value. If you say Matt, just the name of it without quotes, this then is going to be a object. And if you finally have Matt with parentheses after it, this now is going to be a function. These are some of the nuances that you need to know about the R programming language that will then tell R if it is handling a value, whether it's handling an object, or whether it's a function. All right, pop quiz. Which one of these are numbers? Let's take them one by one. 1 is a number. 1 in quotes, or ONE in quotes, these are words. R also calls these strings. And ONE without quotes, this is an object. All right, let's try another one. If we take the number 1 and assign it to ONE, which one of these will work? Which one of these will return an error? Log 1 will work. Log 1 in quotes will not work because that's not a number. Log ONE in quotes also will not work because that's not a number. But the last one, log ONE, this will work because this we assigned the number 1 to. We just talked about how R can store single values in objects. R can also store multiple values, either in the form of a list or sometimes in a whole table. These tables are called data tables, data frames, or sometimes they're called tibbles. In this data frame or data table, we can then extract single rows or single columns out of this. This is important because one of the main things that we do in data science is work with data in tables. There's one last thing we want to do before we finish this video. If you follow the link in the description below, you can head over to this scratchpad that we've generated for you to play around with some of these concepts. If you hit the blue button in the corner here, what you'll see is this will run the code in this space here, which is called the console. You can see that this is going to print out something that looks like a data frame. This has rows and columns, which should look familiar for users of Excel. Let's practice extracting the first column from this data table. The way that we do that is we're going to type the name of the data frame, and then we're going to hit this $sign, and you can see this first column pops up first on our list here. So we can just type that in. If we now come and we run code, we should see two things. In this first box, we end up with the data frame that we see. In a second box below, we have the extracted column from this first column here. So go ahead and try a couple of different column names and see what that looks like. We can also assign this to an object. So if we now take this and we'll just type in object, and this little backwards arrow operator is going to take this part of the equation and assign it to this part. If we click run code, we won't see the second part print out. To do that, we will just type in the name, in this case object. We'll run the code again, and we should see it print out. So go ahead and take some time, play around in the scratchpad. If you want, you can always hit start over, and that will clear everything. And you can hit run code anytime you want to try this. We're keeping these videos short. If you like this, let us know below. If you want to see the next video in the series, hit subscribe. We're going to dive into a special package called the Tidyverse next, and check out all of the different things the Tidyverse has to offer for data science. We'll see you soon.